What's up, everybody? It's Kellen Nitro from Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited coming at you live with another supersized super show coming at you here on the channel. Back when we did our year in review videos at the end of 2020, we hit on, well, obviously WWE, we've hit on AEW, New Japan, but there was one aspect, one very important, I guess it's not even a subculture, it's a culture of pro wrestling that we didn't hit on, and that was the independent scene. And joining me today is a man who knows anything and everything about the independent scene.
Don't hype me up too much.
He is the master, the ruler, the creative guru behind Love Wrestling. It is Spencer Love. Spencer, welcome to Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm really good, actually. You know, I get to sit and talk wrestling. My girlfriend and I are actually doing our Valentine's Day celebrations today. So
nice.
After this, we're going to go and have like an afternoon with the pup and all that sort of stuff. So
cool.
I'm good, man. Things are good, you know, all things considered. But I feel if everybody's focusing on all of the other stuff that, you know, is going on right now, then we're going to have a very similar conversation to the ones everyone's been having for the last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the last year is going to heavily dictate our conversation here. So we'll get right after it. Obviously 2020 started out like any other normal year. And then in March, we had this big thing called coronavirus that kind of crashed the party and really put a kink in everybody's plans and that stuff. I'll hit you with the hard one right off the top and we can kind of expand from there. What is the state? And we could start hyper local and then work our way up. What is the state of independent wrestling right now as you see it?
You know, man, and like, I don't know if the state's the right way to put it because I feel like that's very authoritative on my end. And like, I can only really offer my opinion on stuff. Over the last few months, you know, I can speak about a ton of wrestlers, I'm sure, that you know in the Alberta area. But over the past few months, I think for me, the one thing that's really stood out is just how much some of these wrestlers are doing in their downtime, quote unquote, right? Like when you talk about independent wrestling right now, I mean, it's not easy, especially where we are, to be doing anything in wrestling related terms, you know, like just the way that the restrictions have come down and have your opinions on them either way or what have you, right? But there's just not a lot of opportunity, at least that I would see, that people are able to, you know, host shows even in a private setting, or they're not able to run full-on training sessions, maybe to the degree sometimes that they would want to, right? I say that as an outsider, but you see some of the stuff that people are doing. You look at like a Heavy Metal or a Michael Richard Blaze or Jack Pride, the artist formerly known as Spaceman Barry Grayson, right? I think there are some very good examples of people who have done some great work, and I think that there are some very good examples, maybe on a larger scale, of some promotions that have done some great work. But like you said, man, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was a kick in the yayas proverbially when everything shut down. And especially on the local level for wrestling, right? The only stuff that was really able to happen over the last little bit was dates are tough to come by when everything's flowing, but I believe it was from about May to October-ish or so that PPW and Monster Pro and of course Real Canadian Wrestling here in Alberta all started to run a little bit. CWE's done some shows as well in Alberta as well when that shutdown was sort of lifted a little. So it's not that there's a lack of effort or a lack of desire for people to want to do stuff. People are handcuffed, man.
Absolutely. Well, handcuffed like anything else, any other entertainment or sports medium right now. You know, and I found it really interesting. I know earlier this week you had tweeted a tweet that basically said that, hey, there are free promotions. Just to give the outsiders kind of a look into our area here, there are free, what I would consider independent promotions that you can basically count on shows in normal before pandemic times for at least one show per month here in the Edmonton area. And then beyond that, you have, like you had mentioned, numerous promotions that tour around. You have whatever's happening in Southern Alberta, so on and so forth. But you had mentioned that here in the Edmonton area, you had one promotion that was planning to start up again in May, and we did find out that it was RCW that's doing an anniversary show. They're bringing in Josh Alexander from Impact to wrestle heavy
Which
metal.
is going to be nuts, man.
That's going to be a great match.
I don't know, and obviously the unfortunate injury to Metal notwithstanding, like Josh Alexander, when he was in Alberta last time, when Calgary and Edmonton, like you only really get to experience how good people are when you get to see them live. I think it just adds a whole nother level, whether you're talking about wrestling, hockey, musicians, whatever. Getting to watch him in Calgary, man, it was absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts, man. Like, I think everybody's pretty well versed, obviously, in what he's done with Impact and with the North, and everything associated with him over about the last couple of years. It was cool as hell to finally get to see him live.
Yeah, no, he is one of those standout performers every time you watch Impact, especially now. I think it's really cool that he's getting a singles run now, as Ethan Page kind of, I guess, considers what's next for him going forward and in the next stage of his career. But just getting back to the original question here was, with that tweet that you sent out, you also said that there's one that's considering running once we get the full, I guess, approval from, AHS and all the health authorities to go again. And he said that one may not even start back up at all. I guess that's just kind of a cross section of what we are looking at here. Not every, it's just like every single province, every single state, if you're watching in the United States, has different ways of dealing with this. Rolling out.
Well, and it's tough, like you alluded to, man, because even since I said that, things have changed, right? So it is tough, and I relate this back. The best comparison I can make is I work in hockey in my side job, and I think the hardest part for a lot of people in sports specifically, like we're speaking about, it's just difficult to plan anything when really there's nothing to plan on. You know what I mean? I think that, speaking for myself, at least in my position, it was nice a couple of weeks ago when there were sort of those targeted, measurable goals for when things were starting to open up and all of that sort of stuff. I think that for me, at the very least, it allows promotions, it allows hockey teams, it allows local businesses, your mom and pop shops, whoever it may be, as long as you've got that ability. Not that things are easier, things are just better. I don't have another way to put it, whether it's the mental stress of not knowing what's going on, or the actual real stress that a lot of these people, I would have to assume, have of, when you're making money and that's suddenly taken away from you. That stress is real, man. I don't have to say that. So it was nice to get those. My hope is at the very least that everybody gets to run again. I think that the worst thing that could happen with any promotion or any professional wrestler, anything, there would be nothing, at least for me, that could potentially be worse than having run your last show because of a pandemic, or having wrestled your last match because of a pandemic, or right? And everybody in any industry, I always will stress, it's not a wrestling specific problem, but anybody who has to go through something like that because of circumstances like truly out of your control, that just sucks.
Exactly. And it cuts down on certain things. And this was kind of an offshoot of all of the Twitter activity during this week, was Canadian independent wrestlers, actually Canadian wrestlers from whatever promotion, basically walking out onto Twitter and saying, hey, we need exposure on our product. We need exposure on our promotions, our matches, much like the UK guys have, much like the United States, Mexico, you name it, which was kind of an offshoot of that whole kind of trending topic that was kind of gathering steam at about the same time that we had talked about the tweets from earlier. I can't remember who specifically threw it out there, but it was something along the lines of, there's quote unquote no excuse for wrestlers not to be noticed now because there's so many different options and that stuff. And I think it might have been in pertaining with discussion with like AEW Dark or something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but it was really cool to see Canadian talent from across the board, no matter what promotion they're in or currently based or what they're doing, basically come out with the same message saying, hey, we need a either a national showcase of some sort or something that we can really get behind to push forward our, I guess, to get
brand,
noticed,
country, whatever you want to put on it.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for that. I really do. And the tough thing, and in any conversation at least I've had, with any Canadian pro wrestlers, whether in the proverbial major leagues or at the independent level, it is logistical. In the United States, people can drive 3, 4, 5 hours and hit 3, 4, 5 towns in that drive, right? Whereas looking at Alberta specifically, you've got the opportunity with Real Canadian Wrestling to wrestle a show every weekend. We're very lucky as far as that goes here in Alberta. Like you mentioned, with the PWA running Calgary and Edmonton bi-monthly, PPW is like, there are a lot of options. But when you're, hitting your proverbial 1 or 2 towns in a 3 or 4 hour drive, and then for Edmonton, at least your next town over that would run shows is either Saskatchewan or Regina. I'm not perfect with geography in Saskatchewan, but that's a 5 hour drive. And then you're going out to Winnipeg, and I think it's a 7 or 8 hour drive out even past that, right? So it's not that there are a lack of opportunities, but there are definitely barriers as far as that goes, right? Like when you've got to drive 13 hours to do what a lot of individuals in the States can do in 2 or 3 days, like there's not really, unless you're working a festival or something like that, there's nobody really working 2 shows a day in Alberta, and I would believe Canada. I don't know enough on BC or Ontario and all of that, to be quite honest with you, but
right.
it is tough.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed too is even the folks that put together like almost like the Tony Condello style deaf tours up north and that stuff, they have severely cut back. Obviously, they're not, a lot of them are not touring right now due to the pandemic and whatever. But even prior to that, they had cut back to like a 1 show per day in a certain center type scenario, where in the past they would stay in a small village or whatever up north for maybe a weekend or two, or not a weekend or two, but a weekend and a couple of days or something, and rattle off 3 or 4 shows. I know, speaking with some of the organizers of a promotion up in Inuvik called Totally Arctic Wrestling, is that they were planning on bringing in some talent from BC last year. This is before pandemic again, for a super show type thing in the summer, where they were going to try and rattle off, I think, like 2 or 3 shows over a weekend or something.
Yeah.
But obviously, pandemic has put a little bit of a
damper on it.
Yeah. So it's man, it's tough. It's a catch-22, and it's one of those things where wrestling, I think, in a lot of similarities to, like you had mentioned, like the mom and pop businesses, your restaurants, your craft breweries, you name it. It's an unfortunate realization here, but it's going to be one of those strong can survive scenarios, in my opinion, going forward. But it weeds out, I guess it weeds out the pretenders from the contenders in that basis. So
somewhat, like I said, I really feel for anybody who had to go through a last anything because of this, right? And the tough thing is I have all the time in the world, like you say, if there's your proverbial pretenders, or there's your proverbial, room renters versus promoters, or there's your weekend warriors, or people who maybe don't take professional wrestling as seriously as they should. Some people believe it at the independent level. There has to be a weeding out. There has to be some sort of quality at any point, not just because of this instant, but at any point, right? There are promotions that likely won't come back, and I don't know of any of them, don't get me wrong. But there are promotions that won't come back just simply based on the financials of it, right? And that's tough. Like, there are going to be great pro wrestlers. There are going to be great people out there who you just hope are able to keep doing what they love. That's all you can really say about it, right? If anybody was to lose out of a dream or a career or a promotion that they'd spent years and years and years putting their heart and soul behind because of a shitty circumstance like this, hits in the heart, just hits in the heart.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Rolling back to the exposure question, just one more point I want to hit on with that is,
Yeah.
would a national showcase for Canada work? Whether it's a NXT Canada, for example, put on by WWE, or maybe AEW takes notice of this and puts together something that's kind of similarly happening with the Joshi talent over in Japan right now with this Eliminator tournament that Hikaru Shida and Tony Khan have put together. Would something like that potentially offer, some sort of foothold when it comes to exposure?
Hell yeah. I think so. I think that the big issue there is, as with anything in life, it's the financials, right? Like, it does get tough when you got to be, I would have to assume here, like if you're doing an NXT Canada, just because that's the easy brand to use. So that's the one I'll keep going back to. You're going to be needing to fly talent in. You're going to be needing to do all of that sort of stuff, putting them up in lodging, whatever it may be, because I would have to assume not every pro wrestler is going to move to Toronto the same way that not every pro wrestler moves to Orlando. Nor should they have to have that obligation.
No, exactly.
Right? So you've got to have those financials. You've got to have the ability to get these people who can drive, but probably wouldn't be driving every weekend 20, 25 hours. It is the logistics of it, because I think that if you were to have all of the talent in Canada under one proverbial roof, this country is so talented from East Coast to West, right? Like, I'm certain you and I could probably go through province by province, territory by territory, and list out like some very big names in independent and, again, the Major League Wrestling, right? Like, no pun intended. There's so many great pro wrestlers up here, and I do think that there is an onus to maybe be doing more in some individual wrestlers' cases. I look at some of the things that people are doing in the States, and you look at guys like Ethan Page and what they're doing. And I just think that if that's the standard for a lot of people in Canada, which it's not a shot, it's hard to do what Ethan Page is doing as far as his video content and all of that. That's difficult. And I don't begrudge anybody not doing that, but that's the level it takes to be noticed in Canada right now. It just is. And I just don't think there is enough of that. Again, that's not a shot at anybody's lack of effort. That, for me, hopefully sounds more like Ethan Page is doing great things. That is what the potential for Canadian wrestling is like, right? Because I've got no backstage knowledge. I don't have any insider scoops or whatever you want to call them. But like, I'd have to assume a guy like that right now, pandemic notwithstanding, WWE has to have called him. AEW has to have called him. MLW has to, Ring of Honor, I'm sure, called. Every promotion that has some sort of financials to offer Ethan Page, in my opinion, would be silly not to be throwing money at him, right? So I think if you start to see more, promotions, promoters, but professional wrestlers doing stuff like that and really elevating their own promotional game, that's also, I think, one of the biggest things that would help a ton. The border issue, I think, is a completely valid issue, but one that's beaten to death. I can't add anything new to that. The border issue sucks in the fact that Canadian wrestlers are unable to go down to the States in the same way that United States wrestlers are able to just come up here willy-nilly, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not as fluid as it once was, for sure.
No.
It's one of those things where, okay, if you fly to the States to say, for example, you're contracted to do a couple weeks of AEW Dark tapings, and so you fly to Jacksonville for the week or whatever it is to do that, and then you fly back to Canada. Now, with the stuff that's going to be instituted on the 22nd here, you've got not only the multiple testing that you have to do, but then there's the 3-day quarantine in a hotel, and you got to pay $2,000 or up to $2,000 for. And then on top of that, I think there's still the 10-day quarantine right after that, which is just, take that out. That's 13, 14 days, where in the past, you could wrestle and do a show at like the Nate Gym in Edmonton, and then the next week fly down, do the dark tapings in like Salt Lake City or wherever, and then fly back up and do an independent show in Saskatoon, and that would be your month. I'm just saying, if hypothetically, if that's your higher end, more successfully booked, I guess.
Yeah, if that's where you want to go and that's where you're going, then all the power to you, right? I think that again, I'm not going to be able to add anything unique to the border conversation, right? Yeah. It's just it's shitty. I don't have another way to put it. I think that Speedball Bailey's the easy example as far as that goes, and he, by my money, like, is one of the most talented pro wrestlers in the world. Personal favorite of mine. I'll fully admit I'm biased, but like, that guy, again, in the same way I talk about a lot of talents in Canada, like a Tyson Dukes or individuals like that, like, there should be 10 times the signings there are from Canada. You know what I mean? And Speedball is one of those guys that, in my personal opinion, if the border issues hadn't happened, he would have signed with a WWE or an AEW, or, again, the same way I talk about Ethan Page, wherever he would sort of choose to go, I would have to assume. And he'd be a star. I think he's so cool. I think he's a very unique character and a very, very talented pro wrestler. And unfortunately, just because of that border issue, not that he didn't do great things, whether it's in Germany or England or wherever it may be, but it is unfortunate that you can't get into the United States, because that's just really where the money is. Right.
Enough negativity. Let's get going with some of the positive stuff here. 2020, independent wrestling from a Canadian standpoint. Who caught your eye?
Man, it's kind of nice because a lot of them, like, aren't specifically people who, like, came up in 2020. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you did too, man. I went just so far down the YouTube rabbit hole of people that I just wanted to watch wrestle and clicking as many random links as I could.
I was on YouTube. I was on Daily Motion. I was on, illicit third-party websites that we don't talk about or whatever, but just consuming content, man.
I was going to say, trying to watch NXT on Wednesdays can be an adventure down rabbit holes in and of itself, right? But as far as it goes for me, there are a few. I think that any conversation in Canadian wrestling in 2020, if you're not talking about the Voros twins, whether it's for their wrestling or just being funny as hell, you're missing out. I think they're absolutely hilarious. They're wonderful individuals, but I guess most importantly to this specific conversation inside the wrestling ring, they're great pro wrestlers, man. You watch what they were doing in The Shining with Nicole Matthews over the last little bit. They are just they're so entertaining, but they're not farcical. I don't like that as the comparison, but it's the best word I can think of on the spot. They're definitely goofy individuals, but you watch those guys wrestle and they're good. They're good. I don't know if I can curse here. They really caught my eye. I think Golden Boy Travis Williams is someone out of BC as well that a lot of people should be keeping an eye on. He's, I believe, only 22 at most. He was 21 when him and I spoke. And I'm just not sure of his birthday, admittedly. So he's somebody that I would definitely be keeping an eye on if you guys have the ability to, which, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch Golden Boy Travis Williams wrestle right here on this very same internet machine. Alberta, I've been saying for the last few years, but Zoe Sager, to me, it's inevitable she gets signed. There are so many great female wrestlers here in Alberta right now, and BC and Canada as a whole. But I'm incredibly lucky, and you are as well, to get to watch the women here that we do, whether you're talking about a Zoe or a Kat Von Hees or Nellie Zwicker or Kayla J, Kylie Morgan, whoever it may be, man, they're all great. They really are. So, Zoe, for me, not to make a pun on her finisher, but she's just got the X factor. I think for me, she's going to be a star. She's absolutely going to be a star.
Yeah, personal aside, and she'll kill me for saying this, but I'm kind of partial towards Kayla J because she grew up in my neighborhood, actually just behind me over there. So,
and you know what, man,
to see her succeed. So,
well, and I always feel bad because, like you say with Kayla J too, like, it almost feels like one of those things for me where I would have to go through and individually list every female performer in Alberta, because all of them are so good, but all of them are so unique, right? Like, you look at a Zoe Sager versus, again, a Kat Von Hees versus an Ali Zwicker versus a Kayla J versus a Kylie Morgan. Like, they're all just such wildly different pro wrestlers. Gigi Ray is another one who I think it's all but inevitable. I don't like making called shots here, folks, but 2021, Zoe Sager versus Gigi Ray. That's going to be one of your matches of the year, and they're both going to be major stars. As far as it goes, though, too, like I really started watching a lot more of Michael Allen, Richard Clark, Sean Moore, Davey O'Doyle this year. Again, it just, for me, after I get to interview people, you get to start watching them when you're starting to prepare and all of that. But sitting down and chatting with people and really getting their stories behind their professional wrestling, it draws me to them. It just does, you know, and supporting friends in ways that you're supporting professional wrestlers as well. So getting to sit and watch them a lot more, they're just so good. So good. Right? Like Moore and O'Doyle are training at the New Japan Dojo a couple of times, at least from photos you see online. Michael Allen, Richard Clark, speaking of Tommy Dreamer's 50th birthday today. Yes. That man is owed an opportunity in House of Hardcore. Like, again, you just talk about the great things that Albertan and Saskatchewan professional wrestlers are doing. They're some of my favorites out in Ontario. Holden Albright, Jody Threat, Alexia Nicole. I'm always going to put over Tyson Dukes because by my opinion, he is certainly in contention, and I am happy to say he is one of the, if not the smartest people I've just ever spoken to in pro wrestling. There's so many great people. You go to the East Coast, Cam Stevens, Jeremiah Javen. There's great people everywhere. There really, really are. I could just email you a list if you want of like every wrestler.
I was going to say.
I'm trying not to name everybody because actually one of my mother-in-law's favorite phrases is if you treasure everything, you honor nothing. You know what I mean? So these are people that like over, like you say, that time span of 2020 and the early parts of 2021. There is my long short list.
Love it. You can send me the PDF, bro, and I'll post it.
Sounds good. We'll post a new top 10 every Saturday for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Power rankings or something too. Hey, there's an idea. Man, yeah, just the talent in this country is incredible. But we're going to expand our look here and just kind of talk quickly about a couple things that happen kind of worldwide in independent wrestling here. Before I let you go for this one here, Spencer, but the big thing that I thought was amazing in 2020 was GCW and that whole group of shows that normally run during Mania week, finally getting a chance to rattle off their presentation during, it would have been Canadian Thanksgiving for us up here, but it was just a weekend in October for those elsewhere.
Which is perfect because I got the weekend off work.
Exactly. There we go. But yeah, so you know that weekend in Indianapolis where they rattled off the Spring Break show and Bloodsport and Shimmer and you name it. There's just something like 12 or 14 or 16 shows, and you know with all the COVID testing they were doing with that, and the venue was really cool. It was like a 4-H club show barn almost, but it had an old school fight club vibe to it almost. And it had one of Matt Tremont's farewell matches on his farewell tour, and I think that was the one with Alex Colon that had the highest pay-per-view or most amount of eyes, I should say, on it. And of course you had Janela versus Ricky Morton, which if you haven't seen that match, that is just an insane 10 or 12 minute match. It was really cool.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Like people I feel, and it's a valid complaint a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, but like just because a match is 10 to 12 minutes, like one of my favorite matches ever is Lesnar Goldberg Mania a couple years ago, and that was just a hair short of 4 minutes. It's incredible.
I was there live.
It's not how long it is, it's how you use it, apparently.
Yeah, I was in venue live. It was about free. Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Survivor Series? Or
Mania.
Are you talking about,
I was at Survivor Series as well, actually, which is again, it starts to tie in. Yeah, you start to love things when you get some again that live exposure to it. Because I'm certain if I was sitting at home for Survivor Series, I would have been a little more confused than I was after a few beverages at the Air Canada that night.
Oh, I was watching at home that night, and we were confused as well too, like what was going on. Even after, we were just kind of just sitting here with our mouths open, just kind of like, that is, you know, it felt weird to begin with, but then once it settled in after an hour or so, it's like, you know what, this could actually work for them. But
it was cool. I loved it. But either way, indie wrestling.
Yes, exactly. So that was one of them. And the second one is, and I think it's vitally important that we hit on this too, is if you have a favorite independent promotion, support that promotion by subscribing to their on-demand or their premium content websites. We've seen a sudden just explosion of all these services, especially in 2020, from hyper local, from different promotions just putting stuff out on an on-demand service, to Fight TV becoming more of a thing, to
hey, they followed me back again today.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? How many times have you been unfollowed and followed?
Certainly not as many as some other people out there. It's
okay.
It's an odd choice. It's an odd choice to say the least. But I'm long-term storytelling. We're still feuding, so we can't give you the conclusion of that one yet.
It's the most random happening in pro wrestling today is I guess Spencer Love versus Fight TV.
Hey, it ain't just me versus Fight TV.
Yeah,
there are longer term feuds out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying. There are so many ways out there that you can choose to support your favorite promotion, your favorite professional wrestler, whatever it may be. And again, I know times are tight for everybody. But if you're out there and you've got the ability to buy a t-shirt, or like you say, Cal, like subscribe to their IWTV, or, Edmonton specifically with Backbreaker Media is a great option if people want to get caught up with what's going on out here. They've done great jobs out here for years, right? As far as providing great video content. And I think that you're really starting to see, not that it wasn't there before, but a lot of promotions and a lot of wrestlers over this time really elevated what they were doing as far as that stuff goes, right? So whether it's subscribing to their Twitch channel, whether it's Patreon, like you say, even subscribing to a YouTube channel, that stuff eventually helps however people can support. I wholeheartedly encourage them to do so, right? Because it's just tough times. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's tough times for everybody. If you've got the ability to support, there are a lot of ways to do it that you can support with your financial dollar, but there are also a lot of ways that you can do it for free, continuing to support your favorite independent professional wrestlers, promotions. I don't know. I didn't have a third one there. I thought I'd find it. It's my Michael Scott syndrome kicking in. I start a sentence and try and find myself halfway through sometimes.
and the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable or whatever.
I was going for that. That was at least by design. That's why it was so hard for me to come up with the third part.
Hey, it's all good.
I'm never gonna lie to you. I may screw up, but I won't lie.
I meant to do that. That's my favorite favorite sayings. It's in my top 10. And just one more thing here. And I love just doing this, especially the early part of the year, because, if it comes to fruition, great. If not, then it's just a stupid thing that you said on your podcast or your video. But it's, your wildcat, most pie in the sky prediction for 2020, and I'll leave with mine. You can give me yours right after. I think, or 2021, I should say. I forgot to say.
Don't worry, I've been doing that, so like it's almost like a nervous tick for me at this point. Like my first few months of the year are always same thing as 2020. Oh dang.
The worst is filling out forms like at work or wherever else where you got to put.
You're like awkwardly crossing the zero out with a line now.
Yeah. Writing out checks or something. It's like, but wildcat prediction for 2021 for independent wrestling. I think on a Canadian, on a national side, I think we will see that national showcase of some sort, whether it's a group of promotions banding together and doing a pay-per-view or an iPay-per-view or something, or somebody brainstorming some sort of all-star card. I think we'll see that, on a national level. We've seen the success actually of that on a localized level here with the Clandestine Society show back in 2019, was it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. So, and you know, when I saw that initially, I was kind of, in fact, I look back at my tweets on that day, I was kind of really wishy-washy on the idea, and I was like, oh, okay, it's an all-star card, but it's a small venue, and the fans were invited, they didn't sell tickets, and this and that, whatever. But now looking back on that, I realize how important of a show that was to everybody in this area, and
that was
just,
one of the
it's amazing.
It was one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of in pro wrestling. And earlier when I talk about Tyson Dukes and him being the smartest guy and like the emphasis on the there, the reason I did hesitate when I said that is like, if anybody in Alberta and anybody in Canada doesn't at least consider Michael Richard Blaze on that list.
Oh, he's up there.
Yeah, like he, at least in my experience, man, like he's the guy behind Clandestine for the most part. Some of the stuff he's done in his own career, like you say, whether it's going to the UK, talking about spring break earlier, getting that opportunity, right? He also, like the mind he's got for professional wrestling, even just outside of being a great pro wrestler and being a great person, it's incredible. It really, really is. That guy is he's God's gift to Albertan professional wrestling.
Yeah,
it's quite literally the first article I put out on the site, man, and I stand by that. And you know, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people in Alberta that are doing great work as well. I don't want to discredit that, but like what MRB's done for this scene out here is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You got to give a shout out to Heavy Metal if you're going to talk about people doing great things for Alberta's professional wrestling scene too. You just do. Top Talent Wrestling Academy, top talent, period. Both incredible. I just want to see more Heavy Metal, Big Jess Youngblood beating the hell out of other people. Yeah. Get me independent professional wrestling back.
So that's your Wildcat prediction.
No, you know what? I needed to take a second, put some people over.
You got it. No worries.
My Wildcat prediction, or my outlandish prediction, or hope, I guess. I don't know what the logistics would be, but I would really, really love to see not maybe a super show, but I would love to see I'd love to see there be another Canadian tryout or a Canadian showcase, like you say, but doesn't even need to be a fan attended show for me. It needs to be something where the great talent in Canada has a central location to go and show some of the talent scouts, producers, whatever it may be that attends those things, what they can do. Because that Canadian tryout they had in Toronto in 2019, you see Rohan Raja getting signed by WWE last week. It's incredible, man. I quite literally got to watch his second match here. Like his second professional wrestling match took place in Alberta. And that's nuts to me. It's absolutely insane to me that you see talent like that, you know, and I know every independent scene can say it, but you see talent like that literally start here, literally take their first steps here. And now they're with the biggest promotion in the world, man. It's nuts to me. And I think that if you get more eyes on Canadian talent, I know that's cliche to say, but I think that showcases like your Canadian tryout they had a couple years ago, they're the best way to do it. Whether it's WWE doing it, AEW, Ring of, whoever it may be, right? ROH brought the Voros Twins a couple of years ago as a pay-per-view match. If we can get more stuff like that, it would warm my heart. That's my hope for this year, is more talented Canadians are seen, are recognized, and make hundreds of thousands of dollars in professional wrestling doing what they love.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just a quick story to tell you about that is about 10 or 12 years ago, I attended a Prairie Wrestling Alliance show they were running out at a Century Casino at that time here in Edmonton. And there was this very attractive, very amazing female worker, wrestler with an Australian accent that was just lighting it up in every match she was in. And she ended up today becoming Tennille Dashwood. So
yep.
It all starts somewhere there, folks. And
the first independent show that I ever went to, same thing, PWA's anniversary show at the Century Casino.
Yep.
I believe it was a 4-way, but it could have been a tag match. I can't remember offhand, but Veronica Weiss, Casey Spinelli, Tennille Taylor at the time, Tennille Dashwood now, yep. And Taya Valkyrie, all in that match. And you get to see that at an independent level. You can speak to it. Talent is evident. right?
No,
Whether they're
absolutely.
just starting or whether they're years into their career, like all of those individuals are now, raw talent's evident. All of those individuals had it. And it's so cool to see, again, those people go on to bigger and better and just overall great things in what they love. You know, I've been lucky enough to speak to two of those women for interviews. And again, I'll say it about a lot of the people I've spoken to. They're great human beings. And the fact that they plied their trade here in Western Canada and grew on to do incredible things. Ty Valkyrie is the longest reigning knockouts champion of all time.
Yeah.
That isn't a small feat. That's
Nope.
not a nothing promotion putting a title on you. That is one of the biggest promotions literally to ever exist. Putting that much faith in you. And it's so cool that in some way, shape, or form, this province played a part in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. LoveWrestling.ca. Tell us, you rolled this out, what was it, the 1st of January? I saw the initial rollout for it. What are we looking at here? What is this? What is this monstrosity you've created?
Well, you know, man, it's cheesy as it sounds. It's literally what it is. It's what we love in professional wrestling. I think that the previous venture that I was with, there were a lot of things that I loved with it, and there were a lot of things that I enjoyed doing. But near the end of it, you know, there were a lot of things I felt I was doing more out of obligation than out of a love for it. There were a lot of things that I didn't want to do but had to do, and you know, it was paying a bill. Phone bill was covered because of it, but It's not like that's paying the bills. And when you're not supporting a family on something, you're putting that much obligatory effort into, and you're taking time away from that family and people you love and whatever it may be. It's time for a reset, right? So I shut that down, and I believe end of July, start of August, can't remember offhand, and started planning. About a month later, I started contacting the contributors that we've got on the site right around that time too. And I've got to give each and every one of them all the credit that I possibly can. Like, I feel like it's cliche to say, and I always sort of rolled my eyes when some people would say it sometimes, is I wouldn't be here without the contributors. I wouldn't be here without whoever it may be, because it's said every single time, but like, rightfully so. Now, like, man, I could not be where I am without the people who work for the site and support the site, and like people like you who support what we do, right? It's not like for the most part, we're not trying to do what news sites are doing traditionally, right? Like, I'm not a reporter by any means. I am a fan of professional wrestling. I have never wrestled. I took one ill-advised brainbuster.
There's video of that, by the way, folks.
There is video footage from multiple angles. I'm not a pro wrestler, and I feel there are just people doing news better than me. You know, I don't want to approach things from that way. I want to support great people. I want to support what I love in pro wrestling. I want to support things I love about this sport, things I love about the entertainment, things I love about the backstage. If there's cool stuff to talk about from an interview, then I love writing stories on that. But it's not like, here's a quote from Chelsea Green. I like writing the stories behind it, as cheesy as that sounds. You know, when she's telling me about training with Lance Storm and how fundamental that was, it's nice to make that more than just, here's a quote. You know, it's not much different, but I like to approach it from a place of, let's tell stories. Let's tell people about what we love in pro wrestling, in the hopes that either other people love what we love in pro wrestling and they choose to support us and choose to engage with us because of that, or people disagree with what we love in pro wrestling and choose to engage with us. And as long as it's respectful, man, I'm always cool to chat ideas. And hopefully for me, if we're telling the stories behind some of these great people, not just great professional wrestlers, then maybe at the end of the day, if there are people out there who said, I became a fan of Chelsea Green or TJ Wilson or Gentleman Jervis or Nicole Matthews or Artie Spencer, or any of the people I've been lucky enough to talk to, dude, that's a success for me. That really, really is. That's what I want to do is at the end of the day, a rising tide raises all boats, right? And if the work that I do in my own small way, I don't want to claim to be a big shot or anything like that, but if the work that I do in some small way makes a positive impact on the professional wrestling business, the people I choose to interact with, and everyone in between, cool. So there's the long story behind it. The origins of it is I wanted to do more of what I loved in professional wrestling. And luckily enough, I have been lucky enough to do that over the last 43 days, 44 days. There's 31 days in January. It always screws my math up.
Well, yeah, and every 4 years they decide to throw an extra day in February, and that messes things up. It's just
it's tough. But yeah, like I'm the long story you got. The short story behind it is again, as cheesy as it sounds, let's celebrate the great things in professional wrestling. It's not always a positive business. There are a lot of things that could be done better. There are a lot of things that both culture-wise and business-wise, quote unquote, like in my opinion, could be done better. But at the end of the day, I guess my approach is if I don't like a match on Monday Night Raw, well, I'm not going to write an obligatory article about how much I disliked that and trash a performer who's doing stuff that I've never done in my life. I just don't need to because I don't love it. But if I want to write an article about, I think it's neat that Drew McIntyre's in the Elimination Chamber this year or whatever it may be, cool. Let's do that because that highlights what I personally believe or what I think our contributors believe is cool shit in pro wrestling.
Absolutely. So I'm going to try and let me know if I'm getting anything wrong with any of the links here, but I'm going to try and just run everything down because you guys are literally everywhere and it's amazing. I love it.
Thank you.
So LoveWrestling.ca for everything.
Yes. Basically. That is where you would be able to find, like literally anything that we put out, you will find it in some way, shape, or form on LoveWrestling.ca. But other than that, like you said, it's we really tried to be everywhere. But anywhere you want to find us, if you look up Love Wrestling CA, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, where else are we? Podbean, pretty well any of your podcast catchers or podcast originators. That's where you'll find us. The only one we didn't get Love Wrestling CA on was Podbean, oddly enough. Somebody had Love Wrestling CA, but not Love Wrestling. So there's your one outlier. There's always got to be one in professional wrestling. There's always got to be some unique story to it. So there's the one. Our Podbean account does not fit the brand standard.
That's weird. That is strange. That's really weird. Completely underrated, but I'm a Apple user, so the iTunes podcast feed that you guys got on iTunes is absolute fire. I burned through probably about a minute or 60 minutes, I should say, of cardio last night, actually, in preparation of this, listening to your Chelsea Green interview, to your Casey Cattell interview. I listened to Dream Slam. I love Dream Slam. So you got it's amazing
and
stuff.
Again, if you're looking for someone who's knowledgeable about women's wrestling, man, there is no one I will suggest more than Ferris. Quite literally. She is she's just knowledgeable about everything, about literally everything. You ask her a question about any female professional wrestler out there that's existed over the last 50 years, man, up to this point, I have not been left with, I don't know, like she's just smart, man. There's no other way to put it. And thank you. I appreciate the support for me personally, but like, man, I always love just hearing that people are supporting other people I love. You know what I mean? Whether it's Ferris, Zach, John, again, I'm not going to list everybody because I'd have to list everybody.
It's a separate PDF.
Well, thank you. I just love that people love the content as much as I do. Because like anything that the people send me that are on the site, I listen to it in full. If it's a watch along, I'll watch along with them. And it's fun for me too. That's the nice thing. And I think it's why for me, I just not only believe so strongly in the site itself and what we're doing as a collective, but like, honestly, in each and every one of the other individuals that is on the site. Like if they're, and I've told every one of them this when I've pitched the idea of hopping on and helping us out, if these guys all go on, because I truly believe every person on this site can go on to do great things in pro wrestling, whether it's content creation, wrestling itself, whatever it may be. Yeah. And again, if I can play a small role in that, if someone watches one of Josh's YouTube videos and says, I want to hire you to do shit, cool. That is so cool for me. If God forbid, man, if this crazy idea turns into something that actually helps people and not just lets me do fun things with my friends, holy cow, man, that is quite literally, it'd be unbelievable to me. That'd be the coolest shit.
That's awesome. No, that's great. And, you know, I know that I myself and Morehouse and TL, all the contributors over here on Nitromaniac TV, took notice of what you guys are putting out there. And we were really impressed with what we've seen so far. And we're always talking about the content and that stuff and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
So it's
genuinely.
it's
thank you, Cal.
Yeah. So just to close off quickly, favorite match from 2020 on the independent side that you've seen, if you had to narrow it down.
You know what? I'm gonna throw Clandestine into this because damn it, I can. If it's December 2019, I'm calling it.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
If anybody hasn't seen Artemis Spencer versus Brandon Van Danielson versus Michael Richard Blaze from the Clandestine Society, you are doing yourself a disservice. It's so damn good. It's 3 of Canada's best. The other one that I would recommend from that show, check out the dildo on a pole match. That's fantastic.
You want that was comedy, man. Pure comedy.
That was fantastic. And that can all be checked out on Backbreaker Media, who, again, I cannot stress enough, if you want to get caught up on what's been happening in Albertan professional wrestling over the last 10 years, at least, they'd be the place to go. Every promotion's doing a really good job of their video now and has been for the last little bit. It's not new on any of their ends, but you want a comprehensive history for the most part. Backbreaker does an incredible job. And then I know that the PWA did a really great job of their pivot share over the course of the pandemic. So I'd highly recommend checking that out too. We're very lucky here in Alberta.
Yep.
That's the best way to sum it up. How hard is it for me to pick my favorite match of 2020? Well, I tried to go to as many events as I could, but unfortunately, there weren't all that many.
No, there wasn't. Exactly. If you didn't go didn't get a chance to go to anything between January and basically the 1st of March, you basically were boned. So that's it.
Yeah, I went out to a couple of the RCW shows that they did here when they came back up, and full credit to them. You know, I think we talked about the collective earlier in the show, and RCW and MPW and PPW all running their respective shows. Everybody will have their opinions on it, but I personally believe that, sorry, as my phone just went off, if people can run a show and they can do it safely and they're under the regulations and all that sort of stuff, it's very hard for me to begrudge. I have my opinions on rules and regulations, but it's very hard for me to begrudge anybody trying to professionally wrestle or trying to put money in their pockets, for lack of a better way to put it. And going out to those shows, MPW did a great job of it. RCW did a great job of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to go out and see CWE when they were here, but I think they did a great job. I think as far as their safety went, they not only started strong with it, but they tried to get better and better and better as they went along with their shows. And I think for me, that bodes very well, hopefully, for the return of professional wrestling here in Alberta in 2021.
It will bounce back. There are times here, even going back to Stampede days in the early 80s and that stuff, where it ebbs and flows, and this is just an ebb right now, and it'll flow back up. I have all the faith in the world in it and that stuff. It'll be back up to where it was in 2019, if not greater than. That's not a Wildcat prediction. That's my general prediction.
Not a prediction, it's a spoiler.
That's right, it's a spoiler. to mention Paul Heyman for sure. So but there we go. I think that's a great place to leave off on. So anyways, I'm Kellen Nitro. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you again, Spencer, for joining me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, over the past hour or so here. This is a great talk. You can follow me on Twitter at Kellen Nitro. Share the video, tinyurl.com/Nitromaniac TV. And we also got it's not as an elaborate podcast feed like what you folks have out there. It's an old school SoundCloud, but you can go and check out the SoundCloud link in every video. We basically put the audio from every video up on that SoundCloud link, and you can check it out via that means. If you don't have time to sit in front of a monitor and burn your eyes out or something, and don't sit too close to your monitors, folks. Burn your eyes out. That's something I learned from my grandparents. But anyway, there we go. So anyways, later days, happy wrestling watching, and we'll see you next time on Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited.